Okay, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us in whatever your local time is. Today is Thursday, November 3rd, and this is the Kubernetes community meeting the week before Kubecon. So we will see you all, or many of you all, in person next week, and I totally look forward to that. Anyway, as I mentioned a moment ago, we have no demo this week, so we're going to jump right into the meat of the agenda. And for that, I believe I had up first Chao Zhu, who is here in the room with me, but not in the camera range. So he has to lean forward and wave. It's that camera.
Okay.
No, that's the camera there.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to make a short notice. I had already announced that we are going to migrate to use Tango in last week's community meeting. But we forgot to mention that this will cause some challenges when developers want to cherry pick the PRs to 1.5 branch. Because migrating to Tango will be a huge PR, and it will be merged into the master branch when we unfreeze the 1.5 branch. So after that, cherry pick back to the 1.5 branch will experience some friction. Just want to let everyone know. And the possible friction you might encounter will be the change of the import lines or the types you are operated on, because Tango will operate on the version objects and So when you cherry pick back your PR back, you will need to change from using version object to use internal version object. And there are some other frictions, like the list options are different in the version API and internal API. So things like that. Nothing too difficult, but I expect it will require some human involvement, manual changes. Thank you.
So when people are looking to do cherry picks into the 1.5 through this, first off, Saad and Caleb will know all about this. But when people are looking for putting in cherry picks, should they reach out to you to have them, to help them if they're going to?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so reach out to Chao, and then we can make sure that you know what it is as well, or you, as you're trying to put in the 1.5 cherry pick, know what the impact might be, and then you can scope the work on that as well with Chao. So that's awesome. Thank you. Are you also going to send something like that out to Kubernetes dev?
Yeah, well,
Perfect.
Maybe 1 week before we unfreeze the branch.
Okay, awesome.
Chao, can you just clarify exactly when the change is going to go in? The notes doc says it's going to happen during the code freeze, but you've mentioned twice now verbally that it's going to be after the freeze lifts. So can we just clarify exactly when the change will go in and when cherry picks will become complicated?
After the freeze is lifted, it will be merged as the first PR.
Excellent. So during like the slush period, when we're basically just taking stuff that we want to cherry picks will still be easy. And then when we lift the...
So I could clarify that. Basically what we're planning to do is during the code freeze period, we're not going to touch anything. We're not going to let Chao's change in. We're just going to have bug fixes go in. At the end of the code freeze period, that'll be November 18. We're going to fast forward the 1.5 branch to pick up all the changes that happened in master during that code freeze period. Before we unfreeze, we're going to get a few PRs that are really contentious in things like Chao's client Go code. So that's going to go into master. And at that point, any further changes that need to go into 1.5 will require cherry pick. And now since Chao's changes are going to be in master and they're not going to be in 1.5, the period after code freeze to when we release 1.5, any cherry picks that need to be done will be a little bit more challenging than usual.
Okay, so we'll affect cherry picks before we get the 1.5.0 release that happened after the fast forward.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome, thank you. And maybe you and Saad can work on the language to make sure that we have a really clear timeline when the email goes out.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, hooray for getting in the client Go changes. That's awesome. And thank you for the work, Chao. All right, that was our first item. And then, as we've been already speaking about releases, we are going to continue in this path because we have a lot of in parallel releases happening. So the 1.4 point releases, the next 1.4 point release is 1.4.6 and will be released on November 11th. So you can reach out to Jesse about anything that you think should be part of that, but that is the plan as it stands. The 1.5 release, let's see, we had a couple of topics from Saad and Caleb, and then also Ihor. So who wants to start first?
I could get started.
Awesome, thanks, Saad.
So feature complete date is this Monday. That does mean that all your features need to be LGTM'd with tests written and submitted in the submit queue by 6 p.m. on Monday. Code freeze will be in effect on Tuesday. Any changes related to features that need to go in after that date will need to go through the feature exception process. I sent out an email earlier this week detailing what that looks like, so please take a look at that. It is for extraordinary cases, so if you just happen to miss the date, think carefully and provide justification for why you think it must go into this release. Remember that there will be more releases. The 1.5 branch cut is currently in progress. This is something we wanted to get started early. It's running into some issues with the build that we're working through at the moment. Hopefully we'll have that before the end of the week at some point. And then Chris on our side is going to help set up the test infrastructure on the 1.5 branch so we can start getting a signal from for the branch. And I think I'll hand it over to Garrett to talk about the next item.
Yeah. Should I come to the camera?
Sure, or we can just turn the camera. It's not intentionally not pointing to me. It's just,
Okay,
there we go. Oh, we've got everybody now. Look.
I was talking to Don and a few others earlier this week, and there seems to be some review bandwidth limitations. So a number of people have a lot of PRs assigned to them with the code written, but they may or may not get a chance to LGTM by Tuesday, which is a little bit disconcerting, but we need to be prepared for how we're gonna handle that. And given that this release brushes up so close against the holiday, I think we're gonna have to stick with the feature freeze. And I just wanna bring that up at the community meeting. So if your code is not LGTM, all the things that Saad just mentioned, it may not make the release. And I just wanted to address that here and now so it's not a huge issue next week.
So my 2 cents on that are that let's remember that there is going to be a subsequent release. Like Garrett mentioned, the dates on this particular release are were selected so that we don't go into the holidays, right? We want to make sure that nobody's working through the holidays. And more importantly, let's make sure that the release that we do cut is stable, it goes out on time, and it's high quality. If you miss this particular release, there will be another one, so don't worry.
Anybody have questions or concerns? Because as Saad said, exception processes are for exceptional, well-reasoned reasons that it needs to be in this release. I missed it is not enough. All right.
I'll add a link to the exceptions process as well.
Thank you. That's awesome. Internal area. Okay. I'm trying to share with Robert to, okay, got it. So that's the 1.5 review bandwidth and feature freeze. So if you have code coming in and you don't already have a reviewer that knows about it, then you need to be working on that fast. Okay, features, Ihor.
Yeah, so, well, I have double checked our feature repo regarding the features that are going to target 1.5 milestone. At the current moment, we have 49 features that are going to be added to this release. I'm absolutely sure that not most, but some of them won't be like really ready or really targeting this milestone. So I'm going to double check that and possibly kick off some of these features to the next milestones. I'm going to work on that after Monday, so after the actual code freeze will happen, so I will check all the PRs that are targeting these features. And of course, I will update the spreadsheet that collects all the information regarding these features. Yeah, that's all from me. Hope that we'll have more information after Monday.
Okay, thanks, Igor. And remember that, so this is our last community meeting until after the US Thanksgiving holiday, because next week is Kubecon, then we have a week of a meeting moratorium so we can all recover from Kubecon and get some work done, having lost a week, do face-to-face meetings and awesomeness. And then the following Thursday is the Thanksgiving holiday. So we will all be dressed up like turkeys and doing turkey things.
Yeah, and as Saad mentioned also that all the docs have to be also ready for 1.5 features before November 25. So yeah, there was a question in the chat, which I was just going to do, so maybe we can clarify there. Even though the feature freeze is this Monday, complete coding freeze is this Monday. When is the documentation freeze? Meaning, up to when can we update documentation for new features? Does anybody have an answer on that one?
So the answer to that is November 25.
Okay.
And that is so that we have enough lead time for the docs folks to basically review the docs that are pending and do all the things that are necessary to get them ready for release, which is targeted for December 8th.
Awesome. Thank you.
When are we planning on cutting the first beta, Saad?
The first beta should be cut this week, which is actually before code freeze. And then I'm going to cut a second beta as soon as code freeze happens next week. And then we can cut subsequent betas after that as needed.
Okay, because one issue that we've encountered in the past is that if documentation's not done when our beta releases are ready, then people can't understand how to use and test out those features.
Got it. So that is going to continue to be an issue. Maybe we should send out communication about it.
Yeah.
And push documentation. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It needs to be ready when we cut a beta release.
In the for subsequent releases.
Yes.
Okay.
And when you said you were going to cut the beta as soon as the code freeze happens, is that after the merge queue clears after code freeze, or as soon as we hit the timeline?
It will be as soon as the merge queue clears.
Okay, awesome. So everything that is LGTM should be merged, and that'll be in the second beta.
Yep.
Fantastic.
When are we creating the branch?
We were supposed to create the branch on Monday. We've run into issues with the build, so that has been delayed. I'm hoping before the end of the week, hopefully today, but let's say by end of week.
Yeah, we moved it forward the time since it took so long last time.
Let's also don't forget about not only docs, but about the feature description, like the release notes. So if you have something that has to be described in the release notes, like the new feature or some big improvement in the existing functionality, please also provide that information.
And speaking of the Thanksgiving holiday, November 25th is the day after Thanksgiving in the US. So you're very unlikely to actually be getting LGTMs for like the day or two before that. So you should really, in your mind, think of the docs feature complete as being like November 22nd.
All right, any other questions about 1.5, 1.5 feature, complete code dates, docs freezes, code freezes, betas, all the things?
Just to sort of reiterate Igor's request from a release notes perspective, Igor mailed a question about like what we could do to make the release notes process better, and I suggested if we've frozen all the features that all of the feature owners could conceivably put together release notes right now, which could at least become like the skeleton of a description for what the beta is supposed to look like, so we know what features we get to go run and play with. As my understanding is like the Kubernetes PM group may be the best place for this, but it's private membership, and I'm not quite sure what the best forum is to contact folks and get them to or suggest this to them. So I'm just like doing it out here in the open. But
ping me privately and I will open up that membership. It should not be private. That is my error somewhere.
okay, cool. Thanks.
At the very least, everyone should be able to write to it, even if you're not all allowed to read it. We'll figure that bit out later, but I think you should all be allowed to read it as well. I don't see any reason not to.
Thanks.
Flat out my error. All right. Any other 1.5? And because we did lead with, don't worry if your feature doesn't get into this, 1.6 is coming, what do we get to talk about next, you guess? 1.6. So, Garrett, let's talk about 1.6.
Awesome. So the project's been doing exceptionally well. I just joined a few months ago, but it sounds like we've had 6 releases in a year and a half. And that's great, but that's also led to a number of issues in terms of growth. If you look at the Kubernetes, the main repo right now, there are 4,500 open issues. There are a number of test flakes. And so what I was proposing is doing a stabilization release for 1.6, where each of the SIGs actually take some time and address their own kind of technical debt that's built up, and work on closing issues, work on, instead of spending engineering effort towards bringing new features into alpha, we move forward with fixing tests and fixing issues for the 1.6 release. Does that sound reasonable?
So, I mean, what we just heard about 1.5 is it's a short development cycle. If you miss the deadline, don't worry, there will always be another release.
Yep.
Correct.
And now we're saying, okay, 1.6, no new features, let's just focus on fixes.
No,
you can see the concern here.
I do, and that's not quite what we said. We said each of the SIGs needs to look at the work that they have scheduled and the debt that they have accumulated and make decisions about, judiciously make decisions that lean toward paying down debt, closing issues, moving features that have been forever alpha into beta or forever beta into GA, moving things cleanly forward without a whole lot of new churn.
Okay, so I think encouragement sounds awesome. That sounds great. Hard rules, criteria, sorry, wait till 1.7. That starts to give me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, I'm with Joe. I think we should give people permission and see how many people take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've talked about this as a theme for kind of self-assessing as well.
Yeah, I would say that let's talk about this like thematically, right? Like our job is we've added a bunch of features, but the number of features that people can actively take, use, or how healthy their cluster is also of importance. And so putting that focus a little bit more on, is this making, we've added stuff, is it useful for users? Are they able to use it? That's some of the fixes and bugs. Are the features that we have out there, are they helping people? Can we push them along? And we didn't really have that focus on 1.4 or 1.5. We haven't really focused on that in a while.
I would like to call out that SIG Storage spent all 1.5 improving tests and stuff, and they rocked it. And I'd love to see them be like, heck no, we paid our debt. We're gonna go crazy on alpha. If someone from SIG Apps is like, let's introduce 5 new controller types, I'd be like, no, we have not paid down our debt. We've got a bunch of stuff in beta. So I think, we'll see what different SIGs think.
Right. And I guess from my standpoint as a person who's helping to do some of this triage, I think that's rather concerning that there's still open issues that will have a 1.4 release blocker label on it and, are still open as we're trying to cut this 1.5 release. And there are a lot of test flakes, associated with Federation that are preventing, us here from building on top of that, which is also a problem. So I guess to the point of, having more features that are consumable by people is a good one. One of the things I'm going to try and do, working with Sarah, is making sure that we have a GitHub team associated with each of the SIGs. And because there are some issues that just have no assignees and have been open for basically a whole month or even longer, that have just been sitting there that we need to get some attention from the relevant SIGs. So I guess to your point, yeah, we would definitely be pushing into the SIGs to try and balance new features against stabilizing existing features and paying down actual technical debt. But I agree, it should be like a per SIG kind of process. But we got to do something.
This may be a dumb question, but have we considered ideas about feature flags and maybe masking off some features that we could make available for testing, but not necessarily for general consumption?
The short answer is yes, we already have that. In practice, alpha features are supposed to be disabled by default, whether it's an alpha API or an alpha field effectively specified as an annotation. All those features are supposed to be disabled by default.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so Eric and Garrett have done a good job of writing some questions that we're going to send out to the SIG leads group, saying we want you to take these back to your SIGs and try to establish where you feel you are around debt.
And if you can't tell, that's a worrying sign in itself.
Yes.
Like if you don't know what issues are actually relevant to your SIG or what tests and test failures are relevant to your SIG, if you don't have test coverage, those are good signals that you should be focusing on getting some telemetry.
Right. If you can't look through those questions and go, got it, we're set, then and have to go do research to find answers, then this is a really good signal that we need to spend some more time on that debt.
It could be that your SIG is not paying attention to signals, or it could be that actually there's something that the whole project needs as infrastructure to understand, and we'll take that feedback and figure that out.
Yeah, we can please raise those if that's the case. We have started this contributor experience working group, and we're trying to fill some of those gaps, but we know there's more that is unknown. So this is also, I suspect, going to be a big topic at the Kubernetes Developer Summit coming up next week after Kubecon. So please bring your ideas, your thoughts, and we will get those lists of questions out to the SIGs before next week, so that some of the face-to-face meetings might be able to also have some of this conversation, because face-to-face is so much higher bandwidth. So my hope is that you will all have those discussions there. Anything else on 1.6 release planning and goals? Do we have a timeline yet for 1.6?
I think it depends on how the release goes.
On the 1.5 release?
Yeah.
Okay. So we haven't published 1.6 release timing, or haven't published proposed 1.6 release timing, but it would be early to mid-March would be the estimate.
Yeah. About a quarter's worth, 3 months.
Okay, so March to late March.
Yeah.
Right, because everybody comes back from the holidays. We can't really count on a whole lot of December.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay.
Along those same lines with stabilization, given that we are having sort of feature freeze next week, and then we have December where there's sort of low churn happening, I would love if people could take December and start paying down technical debt before we start planning for the 1.6 release beginning of next year. So if you can identify things that can be fixed, things like improving the build system, triaging issues, all that, fixing flaky tests, December is a great time to do that when there are lots of people that are taking vacations.
Awesome. Thank you. That's an excellent point, Robbie. Okay. Anything more on 1.6?
So I was going to say one more thing on this. There was a discussion over last week or 2 weeks ago when the Basil stuff came up about there really isn't a SIG today that quote unquote owns the build process. There's a lot of overlap with some of the existing SIGs. And I kind of think, we're making some pretty substantial changes to, Basil is a pretty big change in a lot of respects. It would be good if a SIG owned officially the build process, and that they gave a status update here about the whys and the how-tos and the wherefores and what some of the plans are. Because I feel like there's a few people who know a lot and a lot of people who know a little, and it makes it harder for everybody to kind of know where they can pitch in and help with builds.
Awesome. Is there an obvious more overlap than others?
SIG testing over here. Most of the Google test infra guys occasionally show up to SIG testing, but sometimes they don't because they're extremely busy. And I know Jeff Grafton and Joe Finney and Ryan Hitchman, like they all are responsive when necessary, but SIG testing gets pinged on pretty much everything related to testing. And so it can be difficult to understand what's the most impactful or build blocking. Honestly, I think that I would love to see more of their attendance, but the reason that we don't get as much of their attention is because they're fighting so many fires and we could really use a lot more help collectively. So like, I would reiterate and echo your request and amplify it to like sort of a larger team that's more committed to this, right? And honestly, to me, this sounds like a repeat of about where we were a year ago. So if we need to more clearly divide up the line of responsibilities, maybe that's a great discussion to have. I think another one I'd love to have next week over Kubecon is how we start to transition ownership of testing and build infrastructure away from a couple Google engineers to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. Because, I'm sort of led to believe this is their project now and they have some hardware. So it seems like we could start federating this out a little bit to help ourselves grow out of this problem. But I think that's kind of where we are today. I'm super open to like how we get away from this.
Yeah. And the other part of it that I did want to reiterate was we've had a few very motivated people changing the builds to make them better, but we also have had some concerns about how we build and who builds in packages and where those packages go. And we're moving forward, but are we cleaning up all the stuff we've left behind? And it is kind of people making efforts, Herculean efforts, without a lot of support structure, which is unsustainable.
Can you start a thread about that on Kubernetes Dev, Clayton?
Yeah.
To make sure everybody sees it. I don't know if Mike is on the meeting today.
Yeah, it was talked about in that thread, and I'll make sure to highlight that on Kubernetes Dev.
Thanks.
Is testing a broader testing and build SIG? Is that the right way to do it as opposed to spinning out another new?
I mean, my concern about, and there are pros and cons, and I already, and it's sometimes hard to get people to go to a SIG meeting if most of the issues discussed in that SIG meeting they don't care about. Right. On the other hand, I am concerned about critical mass.
Yep.
So it may not be like I think it would be interesting to have potentially a build and release SIG, but I don't know that we have critical mass to do so.
Yeah.
So it could be that we have like a working group and have meetings on demand, or a less formal channel. But I mean, we can set up Slack channels and mailing lists.
Yep.
If nothing else.
I think Clayton was saying by giving it a home, we can generate more critical mass.
That would be nice.
Wouldn't it be lovely?
Yes,
it is
wouldn't
a
it be
theory. Clayton, do you have engineers who want to help?
There are always engineers willing to help. The question, I think, is if one of the themes of 1.6 is a little bit more focus on reliability, then maybe we should also tie this into, we want to get our own house in order, as Aaron was alluding to, on the release and testing side as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll just make a plug. There is actually a doc with a ton of release automation things that need to be done. And we basically just have one person working on that. So, if people are interested in helping with that on that front, there's plenty of work to do.
And I'll just, a link to the doc would be helpful, but just to echo, like the contributor experience working group has probably been doing more improvements related to build and release and test than SIG testing has for quite a while. I think like if we're looking for a laundry list of good ideas to do to make the project more stable and more performant over December, I'm sure they have a lot of great ideas we could look at.
They do, and we would love more activity from the broader community. It's been really strongly led by a couple of Googlers and attended well, but not necessarily as much. I will take this project and run with it. Please, can you help me kind of work from the outside community? So the more of that we can get, the more we will broaden our ability to move forward on this. All right. Anything else on 1.6 or the myriad conversations we're going to have next week about general community improvements, processes, changes, pain points, technical debt, technical pain points? We're going to have so much fun next week.
One thing I wanted to add about technical debt, bug fixes. Bug fixes are something that is going to be super critical during the 1.5 stabilization period. And right now, Caleb is going through a heroic effort to try to triage the hundreds of untriaged bugs. That's an area that we could use help in. If anybody can help us to triage that or to help fix bugs, please, please, please help. We can't do it alone.
And for any and all of you who don't have labeling privileges, which is a lot, we're working on tooling to fix that, but B, feel free to, I'm going to just open myself up here, ping me and tell me what labels to put on things, and I will commit during this release cycle to put labels on things. It may not be the super fastest turnaround, but when I'm pinged in GitHub, I usually do make the GitHub action, unless it sounds completely insane, in which case I ask somebody else first. Oh, and Caleb and Saad said, off we go.
And definitely one thing you can do by helping is by answering the pings you will be receiving on your triaged flaky issue on GitHub or on Slack if you have a bunch, which I've been batching up.
All right. Fantastic. So I keep mentioning the road to Kubecon and all the fun that is going to happen next week. Monday is OpenShift Commons. Tuesday and Wednesday is Cloud Native Con and Kubecon and Prometheus Day and all the other things, because I think there's also some work, some sessions around open tracing, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think FluentD is looking like it's going to make it past the Technical Oversight Committee this week, which means Cloud Native Compute Foundation will have 4 projects, which is super deluxe awesome. And so next week, just great fun, lots of announcements, lots of partner announcements. So you guys in the communities are doing a whole lot of awesome, and it's super exciting with a little bit of a inside baseball view to see all of the things that you all are going to be talking about next week. So thank you for your efforts to A, make our community awesome, B, make Kubecon and Cloud Native Con and Prometheus Day and open tracing afternoon or whatever, all of this next week. Great fun. We have a bunch of special interest group face-to-face spaces that are happening. Ihor has been collecting those into a spreadsheet, which is linked in this doc or in this agenda doc. If your SIG face-to-face is not listed on there, SIG leads, please put it there, because that's the doc that I'm using as the canonical what's going on next week for SIGs. If your special interest group has tried to schedule a face-to-face and has not found space, call me. I think half the hotels in Seattle now know me by name, and I'm trying to find rooms for people where we need to. And wow, did I just open myself up. But yes, ASAP being the key point. Thank you, Jason. There is also a link listed in here for hacks and SIGs. So there is going to be a room on Tuesday and Wednesday at Cloud Native Con, Kubecon, Prometheus Day. The branding on that's got to get fixed. There's going to be a room that has tables dedicated to topics. So if any of you have been to OSCON before, it's kind of like tribe tables. Some of the special interest groups are meeting there, and some of the special interest groups are basically holding open office hours for users there. I think there's going to be some Meet the Google developers time that's going to happen there, because the Google team wants to have a space that we can put some of our developers. I think the Technical Oversight Committee from the Cloud Native Compute Foundation is going to have a table during that time. So if you have a special topic that you think needs a little space and and you want people to know that they can come talk to you, sign up for time on the Hacks and SIGs list. There's still space, and it doesn't have to be multiple hours of blocked time. It can be just a short bit, and you can then publish it with whomever you think should meet you there.
And where is the link to that hacks and SIGs list?
The hacks and SIGs list is I have it linked in the community meeting agenda. Fantastic. Bob was chasing this last week to find out if it was for real. It is for real. It just wasn't getting populated very quickly because most of the SIG meetings were different than what the hacks and SIGs idea was. So the hacks and SIGs is more meet the public with your hack or your SIG or your topic. So it is live, it is real. Please do put something in there if you have a topic or some group that you think the great user population and other developers that may not know our community intimately would want to come talk to somebody about. Okay, so that covers Monday through Wednesday. Thursday is Kubernetes Developer Summit. All of the invites are out at this point. If you haven't RSVP'd, you will be shamed if you show up, but we'll probably still let you in. Probably, no guarantees. But so the invites are out. The schedule has been posted, and we will have an opening session for about a half hour that's going to cover what we want to get out of this, basically the structure of the day and the meetings and how we want them to turn into action items, roadmaps, things to do, owners, a little bit about moderating them, because even if you have 2 moderators in the room, you can always get help from the audience to keep things on track and to document. We also, that morning, will be giving out our 1.4 community award, because we are now almost delivering 1.5. So we have a community award that will be given out that Thursday morning based on the 1.4 community retrospective meeting, who is most named as pivotal, shall we say, in the community, in the release of 1.4, the nut that held it all together, so to speak. What else? I think we're on to notices, unless people have questions about anything Kubecon or Kube Week, as I'm considering it these days. No questions. I see one question that came to me privately about nominating for Dev Summit Day. Is there a way to register? Not at this point. We've hit our cap. There was a lottery for people that did not get invites. It would only be on cancellations at this point. So I will reach out if we have cancellations. All right, then notices. That's it. This is the last community meeting until the first week of December. I will miss you all. It is terrible. So sad. But I will have my Thursday mornings back. Yay. Okay. Tears, yes. Wailing, lamenting. Oh, elation too. Okay, the week of Kubecon, there's also no community meeting. See, this is how we're going to follow all the way through till December. And for those of you who are SIG leads, the week after, next week and the week after Kubecon, please update your SIG calendar invites so that we don't have rogue invites that people from outside the more core group might want to try to join us during the week of Kubecon or the week after when we're having a moratorium. So please update your calendar items, cancel those, and make sure that you don't have any invites over the Thanksgiving holiday, over the moratorium week, or over Kubecon if you're not actually intending to have those meetings. Please also feel free to put the face-to-faces on there. That's it. That's what I've got for notices. Does anybody else have anything else? We've got 20 minutes that we could have of our lives back to go prepare for Kubecon.
I just wanted to thank the fine folks who sent me this wonderful hoodie from the Cloud Native Computing Foundation for the work that I did on the release notes. That was really kind of neat. And it's
release notes. And it's, shall we say, incentivized you to help us on the release notes again?
Possibly, possibly.
That's who we're asking. How can we get those release notes earlier so that it isn't that last 2 days? And thank you so much for your work on that. And nice hoodie. Anybody else? Going once? Twice? You're on mute? Fantastic. Have a lovely week. I will see you all next week in Seattle or in 3 weeks back here, same time, same channel, all that.
Thanks, everyone. See y'all later.
Yeah, bye.